Hi, welcome to the Vergas Show. I'm Sherry Hansen. Thanks for joining me today. I'm at the home of Don and Marie Crozier. Thank you, Don, for inviting me in. Beautiful home on this cold day. It's so nice and cozy warm in here.
Yeah, at least it's warm in the house.
It's warm in the house. We're doing what we have to this winter, aren't we? Yes. Well, thanks for agreeing to be on the Vergas Show. Don, I know growing up, I remember hearing stories of, the Croziers, they spent a lot of time up in Alaska. And I think that a lot of people would like to hear about how that came about and what you did up there. And so we were just visiting before we started taping, Don. You were in the Marine Corps for a year, and then take me from there.
Well, after I got out, I found a job with a contractor here driving a gravel truck. And in 1947, my mother became ill with a terminal illness and was going to pass away. And my sister, who was living with her husband in Fairbanks, Alaska at that time, came home to be with the family and the funeral and so on. And afterwards, she told me I should go back to Alaska with her because there was a lot of work and the pay was good and good opportunities there.
Had you ever been to Alaska at that point?
No.
No, never had.
Well, at 19 years old.
Right, of course, yeah.
I hadn't gotten very far yet. And I said, well, there's only one problem. I said, I was going with my future wife at the time, and I said, I don't really want to leave her. I said, if her folks would agree to let her go along, I would go. Well, she visited with her family, and her folks said, yeah, it would be all right. So we loaded everything up in the car and headed for Alaska.
Headed for Alaska. You drove up there then?
We drove up there.
Sure. Okay. And so where were you at in Alaska when you first got there?
Fairbanks.
Fairbanks. Okay.
With the road.
What was the road like driving up there?
Yeah, it was.
I've heard stories of that.
It was a little different. See, in '47, it was still a military highway, and it wasn't open to the public.
So, public couldn't just drive on it?
Not without a permit.
Oh, okay.
At mile 101, just north of Dawson Creek, there's a town there named 101. Well, it's really 101 on the Alaska Highway, mile 101. And they had a gate across the road manned by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You had to produce $250 cash apiece. You had to have 10 gallons of gas extra because there were places with 350 miles with no habitation on the road. No services of any kind, and 2 spare tires, tools, oil, shovels, saw.
And you had to have all that in your vehicle?
You had to have all that before they would let you go. Then you're on your own, see.
And then you had to know how to use it.
You had to know how to use it. So fortunately, we had all that stuff because we were prepared for it. We knew what we had to have. And we got there and got the permit to travel the highway. The next year in '48, they opened it up to the public.
Okay.
But then it was still considered a military highway. And it was very rough and not very smooth driving, you know.
No,
it was just
and I'm sure it took a while.
Yeah, it was slow. And I remember out in the middle of the wilderness, there was a lot of rocks would fall off the mountainsides, get on the road, and I tried to straddle one and hit the oil pan. Killed the engine. Why it didn't knock a hole in the oil pan, I'll never understand. But anyway, the ditch was shallow there, and we pushed the car off the road in that shallow ditch where I could crawl underneath it. And I took the oil pan off and cut a block of wood, pounded the dent back out, and put it back on. It only held 4 quarts of oil after that, but it ran just fine. Those old cars were made of metal.
Old cars were good, yes.
So that was quite an experience.
That was an experience. So you got there after all of that, and then what did you find when you got to Fairbanks?
Well, my wife and I found, found a job with a plumbing contractor. At that time, the Air Force was still part of the Army. It was called the Army Air Force in the 40s. And they had a field there at Fairbanks called Ladd Field. And they were building a bunch of enlisted men barracks there, and we got a job with a plumbing contractor, which you're probably familiar with.
I'm familiar with that, yes.
And my wife got a job in the payroll department, and I got a job as timekeeper. And I would go around and cost code the various hours to different jobs. And we kept that job for that whole next year. And then '48, we decided we would get married, so we got married in Fairbanks. And had a honeymoon in Anchorage. And Anchorage at that time was just about 10,000 people population.
Oh, okay, a
now
little bit
it's
smaller.
about 260-some thousand, so it's really grown.
So you've seen a big change in that.
Big change, but back then the sidewalks were still wooden and the streets were gravel. And
What kind of a living accommodations did you have then?
well, when we worked for the plumbing contractor, there was a service company called Universal Foods that serviced the workers there, and they had accommodations. So as a married couple, we could stay. It was very cheap housing and very cheap eating. We'd eat in the mess hall there, see. And it was...
Was it rustic accommodations? Did it
no,
have
it was like...
a dormitory
a
almost?
dormitory style,
Okay.
yeah, right, yeah. And then we eventually, in 49, we came home in 48 for the winter.
You came home for the winter.
We went south for the winter. That's what I told everybody. We go south for the winter. So then in 49, we went back, the spring of 49, and I worked for the plumbing business was over with then. They'd finished. And I got a job as a ready-mix driver for a company. And my wife went to work on the air base for a major as a secretary.
Okay.
And we spent the summer of 49 there, and then that fall we came home. And I spent 14 years in the States before we went back again in 64. After the big earthquake in 64, we went back up again.
Don, I want to hear about when you went back up there again, and we're going to come back next week and be able to hear about that. But when you mentioned that you and Marie had gotten married up there, I imagine none of your family was able to come up for the wedding.
No.
No?
We just had, well, you know, Brian Sluter, the sheriff.
Yes.
His parents, his dad was in the Air Force up there.
Okay.
At the same time that we went up there in 47. Well, he was married to his wife, Luella, Brian's mother, and it was a good friend of Marie's going to school in Frazee.
Okay.
Well, she wrote to him and told him that we were up there, so he looked us up, and then he called for Luella to fly up. So the four of us were there.
4 of you were there.
Until 49 when they left.
They came back too.
They came back in the summer of 49.
And then that's when you came back too.
Yeah.
Now
we did a lot of hunting and fishing and running around together all over Alaska, you know.
That's fun. I imagine the hunting up there was just phenomenal.
Oh yeah, Virgil, her husband, and I shot a huge moose, and that was kind of fun because all the old timers there, they all take river boats and go up the river and shoot moose when they come out to drink water in the mornings and stuff. We said, well, we're just going to drive out in the country like deer hunting, you know. And they laughed. They thought that was the funniest thing they ever heard. You know, you just don't drive out and find a moose. Well, we went out one evening after work, and about 30 miles north of Fairbanks, there, big old moose jumped across the road. And I said, ooh, let's stay the night right here and sleep in the car. In the morning, he won't be very far. And he wasn't. We got up the next morning and made a little circle. There he was. We shot him. He was a huge moose.
So any of you hunters out there, that's all you have to do. But Don,
Yeah.
we're gonna cut this off now, but we're gonna come back next week and hear about that when you went back up there. So
Okay.
you have a good day in Vergas.